Christian Science Chaplain Angela, and I serve in a state prison in Solano County and in a county jail in Sonoma County. I'd like to tell you about a story about a very special inmate that I've been working with for a little over a year. And just to set this up, I like to tell the inmates often and over again that Christian Science is more than just pretty words. It's a principle that can be practiced. And if all it is are comforting words or just pithy sayings that make you feel better temporarily, then there's really no point to it. The first time I met this inmate, we had a Thanksgiving service for the inmates, and he came and was very honest about his reason for coming. He wanted to find out what is wrong with Christian Science. And he kept coming because he would ask questions and have them answered. And then he wanted to know, well, what's the next thing that could possibly be wrong with Christian Science? So every time he came and had questions, we would talk honestly about them. And he always seemed to go away fairly satisfied with what he was learning. And he did a lot of searching and a lot of studying on his own. He was very earnest. Now, there's something you need to know about this inmate. I accidentally and for roundabout reason actually found out what he had been convicted of, and it was very serious and frankly very horrifying crime. So the fact that he was coming to the Christian Science services and really earnestly seeking and searching, he wasn't coming for physical healing. He really was coming for some very deep questions he had about the salvation of his own soul and really issues, most fundamental issues about his life. At one point, when I had discovered kind of what he had been convicted of, I really, every time he came to thought for the week in between seeing him until the next time, I just really held him in what Psalms calls the secret place of the Most High. I just kept cherishing his true spiritual identity as a child of God and knowing that God was communicating directly to him. And it also occurred to me that this remorse that he was feeling was actually a really positive sign. And so I stopped praying about, taking away a sense of remorse, and instead just really claimed in my own thought that he had his own relationship with God, and he would know and have exactly what he needed straight from his father-mother love. One of the services in prison, I mentioned something that Mary Baker Eddy says in the Manual of the Mother Church, which is a little book that is the helpful guidelines about how to run a church service and kind of the structure of services in Christian Science and Sunday school and things like that. I had mentioned that the prayers in a Christian Science service are offered exclusively for the congregation. Well, this really intrigued this gentleman. He said, where did you get that? And I told him that it was from the manual and he wanted a copy. And I got him a copy. And again, a week went by, he read it twice. And by the time he had read the manual, that seemed to answer a lot of the questions he had. The following week was when it really got interesting. He said that unbeknownst to us, he had weeks ago, I think it had been 3 weeks at that point, asked his doctors to please take him off all medication. He had been on 13 meds. Most, if not all, were psychotic drugs, like very hardcore behavior and mind-altering drugs. And he had to work really hard to get off those drugs. They did not recommend it at all, but he made his case and they said, okay, you can try it. And what he discovered was that he was clear-minded and that he was able to have his own relationship with God and do his own thinking. And he really just felt reborn at that point. So he was announcing this to the inmates and to my husband, who was the chaplain's assistant at the time, and I and me, and we were just thrilled to hear this good news, but it got even better. He proceeded to take off his knit cap, and this gentleman had very long dreadlocks, but he took off his knit cap to reveal the fact that he had shaved his head. And he said, I have shaved my head so that I am not identified as a Rastafarian because I want to be identified as a Christian Scientist. And he said, the reason I want people to identify me as a Christian Scientist is because I want to be held to the standard of loving my neighbor as myself. I want people to know that they can come to me for help. And I want people to know that that this is not just about the talk, it's really about the walk. At that point, he wanted to become a member of the Mother Church, and so we processed his application, and the doctors, of course, were very interested to test him again and to make sure that he wasn't a threat to others or to himself. And so they did test him again, and they found that indeed he did not need the drugs after all. This is one of his favorite stories. It's one of mine too. He loves to tell people about how Christian Science healed him of the need for all these drugs. And he has just been a really stalwart worker, bringing friends and talking to others about Christian Science in just the most earnest, honest, and loving way.